Once upon a time, for the sake of a woman, I spent my time in a myriad of flowers, with no leaves on my body. Until she brought me the greatest humiliation of my life. I swear, I will make her regret it for life. In the world of waves, I will live for myself. Men, be grand. Chapter 1. Misconduct. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiang, Ning Xian is about to air soon. The boss wants you to go down and keep an eye on her. I put down what I was doing and got up to walk downstairs with Shuakai. The company I work for is a live streaming guild. The scale of the union is not large, with only over 50 on-duty anchors. I am the supervisor of operations department 2, with 13 anchors and 3 anchor operations under my command. As early as 6 months ago, I was no longer responsible for the promotion and operation of a specific anchor. Today's situation is quite special. This Ning Xian is a new anchor who joined the company 2 months ago. Her appearance is very impressive, standing out among the many female anchors in the company. But she can't sing, and dancing is also a mess. It was almost half a month since the trial broadcast, and the platform changed 3 times in a row, all of which were the kind of industry giants, with no improvement in data. I talked to her a few times and found that this girl has a lively and outgoing personality. She is very good at chatting, so I changed her to a niche platform where users value the appearance and chatting ability of the anchor, which made her barely pass the trial. A few days ago, a big brother came to Ning Xuanxuan's live broadcast room, and almost every day he would give a reward of over 10,000 yuan. On the big platform, this can only be considered a minor incident, but on the small platform, it is a true big brother. Just these past few days, big brother has been cheating on me. He told Ning Xian that he hoped to see her once. The reason why the gold host and the anchor meet is something that can be imagined with one's buttocks. In fact, the attitude of the live streaming union towards this matter is mostly not in favor or against, but it will subtly express encouragement. After all, Big Brother's money was not brought in by a strong wind. If it were smashed with real gold and silver, even a fool wouldn't believe it if there were no other intentions. Moreover, if the female anchor meets with the big brother privately, in the future, the big brother will definitely work even harder when giving tips. Which company would oppose this kind of thing? But the only prerequisite is that you must be willing and willing. In today's rule of law society, no matter how much one looks at money, no one dares to do things that force good people into prostitution. It's just that Ning Xian is quite sneaky. She didn't refuse, but she didn't agree either. She kept hanging on to that big brother. The reason why Shuakai finds it tricky is because the big brother suddenly ran to Haicheng without any warning today. I don't know what Ning Xian said to him privately. He directly said in the group that he must see Ning Xian tonight, otherwise it will make our company look good. After all, this is the host who can spend 10,000 yuan a day playing live streaming, and through the internet cable, no one knows if the other person is a ghost. Although I feel that this guy is probably just talking high, I'm not afraid of 10,000, just in case. Who knows if he will really cause something wrong. So, the boss asked me to follow up tonight. I sat in the operations room outside the live broadcast room, looking inside through the glass window. At this point, Ning Xian had already debugged the equipment and opened the live broadcast room. Today, her attire follows the recent trend of pure desire. Tied up in a ponytail, with light makeup, looking at her fair and tender face, she looked like a neighbor girl. But the low-cut white tight skirt vividly outlines the snow-white shoulders and bulging lines. She occasionally stood up and walked around, revealing her long legs in black silk. This effect, not to mention the audience in the live broadcast room, even for an old operator like me who is used to seeing beautiful women, I can't help but feel a bit dazed in an instant. At this moment, Shuakai's WeChat hanging on the computer flashed. Click on WeChat and you will see the speech of a person named Linjiang Longa, in Shuakai's operation group. I have arrived at Haicheng. Are there any brothers with me tonight? I'll call Xianer out to drink. In this WeChat group, there are several influencers under Zhuokai, as well as several fake influencers on their company WeChat accounts. I opened another WeChat account on my computer and replied in the group. Xiaolong, haven't you only been playing in Xuanxuan's live broadcast room for a few days? With just those 3 cuckoos and 2 dates, I just want someone else's girl to come out and roll the sheets with you. Isn't that a bit overwhelming in my heart? My words are full of provocation, but others will definitely not doubt them. Don't think that these wealthy people who play live streaming have many qualities and good mentality. In fact, most of these people are irritable and their quality is not high. Many of them are nouveau riche. I've spent almost 100,000 yuan these days, can't I feed a newly debuted anchor? The other party simply stopped typing and sent a voice message. I continued to stimulate him and said, you said you take advantage of the money quite a year, why do you look like a beast that can't move its legs when it comes to pretty women? Quickly, the other party replied with another voice message. You know nothing. Recently, my friend and I made a bet on whether we could have our first love together. My first love has already gone abroad, and do I even fly abroad to make a fuss? Ning Xianxian looks quite like my first love. When she handles things, the light is a bit dim, and she can't distinguish clearly. Damn it, that kid has already succeeded, I need to work hard. After sending this message, he seemed to be afraid that others wouldn't believe him and posted a chat record of a man and a woman. November 21, 16.37, man, when will you arrive? I can't even wait. Woman. What's the rush? I just went to see the wedding dress. I'll take my best friend and go over later. Male. Old place, the door password is the same as before. My big knife is already starving and thirsty. JPG, female. Dead ghost, I'll see how I deal with you later. November 21, 18.21 man, aren't you going to tidy me up? Why did you end up crying and calling for your husband, and even letting me spare you? Female. Bad guy. I need to go back quickly, otherwise my family will find out. Male. Go ahead, go ahead. The chat records were very explosive at the beginning. The other big brothers in the group were all blown up and eagerly requested to see the follow-up. Lin Jianglonga didn't disappoint either, so he posted another paragraph. November 25, 20.42, female. Do I look good in a wedding dress? Man, it looks good, I almost couldn't help but tear it off for you. Your new home is also good, and your husband treats you quite well. Female. I just received the key today, and you are the first man to enter this house. Shy, man, I didn't wear it today. If I get pregnant, what will your husband do? Bad laugh, female. Then let him take care of it. The big guys in the group, sentence after sentence, the atmosphere became increasingly lively, with colorful little expressions flying around. But I was cold all over, feeling a dizzy sensation. Because the man posted a photo. In the photo, a woman wearing a messy wedding dress, half naked with legs and a flushed face, sat on the sofa. She is my fiancée A.E. Chen Lin. The house where this couple of dogs hang out is the wedding house I just bought. Chapter 2. Rules. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. All my friends who know me and Chen Lin say that Chen Lin's interest in me was a blessing that I have cultivated through countless good deeds in countless lifetimes. When she was in college, she was the head of the dance department, surrounded by beautiful women. Initially, her pursuers could almost form a reinforcement team, but she chose me, a poor boy with no money or power. I have always warned myself that even if I sacrifice my life, I will give Chen Lin happiness. After graduation, we all successfully found jobs and stayed in this city. I work like crazy and often work overtime until late at night. Because one person can handle 3 people, even the boss calls me a hard worker and often takes me out as a role model on paydays, which leads to my poor popularity in the company. I have never taken the sarcasm and ridicule in front of or behind others to heart. In such a big city, there is only one person worth caring about. I only know that other women have it, and Chen Lin should also have it. No matter how hard or tiring, I am willing. After working day and night for a year, I finally managed to scrape together enough down payment for the house. I have already agreed with Chen Lin that we will go and collect the certificate when she returns from her business trip next week. Chen Lin told me that the dowry can be obtained without urgent need. As long as you buy a house, she will come with me to collect the certificate. At that time, I was still deeply moved and regarded her as the best woman in the world. I never imagined that one day I would discover her betrayal, and it was an incredibly disgusting way. My mind was in chaos, staring blankly at the computer. Jiang, Ning Xianxian has come over. Zhuo Kai approached me and pulled me back to reality. I glanced at the floor mirror next to me and found that my face was very pale. But I still forced myself to remain calm. I know that the more I am at this time, the less I can panic. I rubbed my face hard and turned my head to look at Ning Xianxian standing behind me. What's wrong? Ning Xianxian looked at me with a pitiful expression on her face and said, Jiang, that dragon brother is so annoying that he insists on asking me out. He really doesn't want to see him. Zhuo Kai's face immediately changed next to me. Ning Xianxian, do you know how important it is to have a big brother to support us in our industry? When you start broadcasting on a new platform, you rely on a few accounts of the company to give you rewards. How can you earn money? It's normal for Zhuo Kai to be impatient. He is one of the 3 operators under my command and also the least experienced one. Ning Xianxian is the one he is in charge of, and so far, the only anchor in his hands who has the hope of making a name for herself. This is directly related to Zhuo Kai's probation and his performance bonus. It's not urgent to blame him. Ning Xianxian didn't pay attention to Zhuo Kai, instead she walked up to me and hugged my arm, then pressed her pointed chin like a cone against my shoulder. Jiang, can you help others? Ning Xuanxuan's eyes were big and she wore beautiful pupils, staring at people with flickering eyes, complemented by her neighbor girl-like temperament. If it were other men who were hit by this combo, they would probably be dizzy immediately. But who am I? I have been in this industry for so many years, what kind of woman have I never seen? To be honest, any woman who works in this field doesn't have 800 ulterior motives. Ning Xuanxuan's rank is still too low. I expressionlessly pulled my arm out of Ning Xuanxuan's chest. Go ahead and moan. This scene directly fooled Ning Xianxian and Zhuo Kai. Especially Ning Xianxian, her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked at me. I waved my hand and said, if you don't want to go, don't go. Besides, the company doesn't have a clear policy, so you're not allowed to contact the owner privately. Zhuo Kai hurriedly said, Brother Jiang, this rule is a rule. I stared at him impatiently. Why, do you the final say or do I the final say? This matter is settled. After speaking, I was too lazy to bother with the 2 of them and left directly. This is when live streaming has the highest popularity. If it were normal, I would definitely stick to my position and sit in the office, staring at data. But after discovering that kind of thing, I don't have any mood for work. I walked straight to the rooftop, leaned against the railing, took out a cigarette, and started smoking one by one. Before, whenever there was a lot of work pressure, I liked to stand here and daydream. Our company is located among the best CBD in Shanghai, and you can easily see the Pearl Tower when you look up. Looking at those towering buildings, I always feel ambitious and confident that I can take root in this city and live the life I imagine. However, the 2 chat records just now shattered all my ambitions and ambitions. I never thought that the woman I love so deeply, Chen Lin, who always appears in front of me as a virtuous wife and mother, would be so dirty behind my back. When I think of her and other men going through ups and downs in the house I bought, my heart feels like a needle prick. It's ridiculous that I have no thoughts of questioning or retaliation. I have been in the live streaming industry for so many years, and I really know women too well. A woman, since she can do such a thing. That means, in her eyes, I am just a joke. No matter what I do, it has no meaning, and in the end, it only hurts me. Besides, what kind of revenge should I take? From beginning to end, I have been very clear about my own understanding. I am just a small worker without any background, powerless and powerless. Why embarrass myself? If I have any ability, I won't let go of that dog man and woman. At this moment, I just feel disheartened and lazy. After all these years of hard work, all the money I earned was used to pay the down payment for the house. In order to reassure that slut Chen-Lin, her name is only on the room book. I originally planned to add my name after getting married. Now it seems that I am a complete clown. At this moment, there was a thumping sound of footsteps coming from behind. I turned my head and saw a woman wearing a fiery red dress and short skirt walking over in high heels. A standard model figure, paired with a perfect face, exudes a strong aura. Do you have any cigarettes? She walked up to me and didn't wait for me to reply before reaching out and picking up my cigarette box. She frowned when she saw that it was empty inside. The next moment, she actually pulled the freshly lit cigarette I was holding in my mouth and stuffed it into my mouth. Then, he took a deep breath and raised his head to spit out a long breath of smoke. From my perspective, those red lips and pristine white necks are simply irresistible. Perhaps it was because the cigarette was taken from my mouth, or maybe the stimulation I received tonight was too intense, and my heart rate unexpectedly accelerated. Oh, it's really rare. Jiang Xiaohui, you also have an extraordinary heart. The woman stared at me with beautiful eyes and said with a smile. However, there was no smile between the eyebrows and eyes. Chapter 3. Capable People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The woman in front of me, named Chulina, is my boss's wife. Speaking of which, Chulina is also a capable person. After marrying her boss, she started from scratch and together founded our current live streaming guild. As the only remaining veteran employee of the company today, I have almost witnessed the love-hate entanglement between her and the boss throughout the entire process. Although the two are now named husband and wife, they are like enemies when they meet. To be honest, it's not really Chulina's fault for this. Actually, what our boss did was a bit outrageous. Since the company grew, he has been living in the office almost every day, hooking up with those anchors and singing every night. To be honest, at least in terms of women, ancient emperors were not as elegant as our bosses. Many people don't quite understand the boss's mindset. Our boss lady was a well-known model before starting her own business. After starting the company, I set out early and returned late every day, fully capable of serving as a virtuous wife in both the living room and the kitchen. It can be said that the majority of the credit for the current situation of the company lies with the boss's wife. It is indeed a strange thing for the boss to let women like the boss's wife go unnoticed while being obsessed with anchors who are all high-tech. Over time, various negative rumors about the boss lady have been circulating in the company. These rumors are one by one outrageous. Some say that before getting married, the landlady and the boss were just canaries of a big shot, and getting married to the boss was just a cover-up. Some say that the landlady has an irritable personality and is always cold and violent towards the boss at home. Some people say that the boss lady is not actually a natural beauty, and her figure and face are also a result of being whole. Even more outrageous is to say that the boss lady came back from Thailand. Of course, as an entrepreneurial veteran of the company, I am very clear about my psychology, and these rumors are all nonsense rumors. I still have some understanding of why the boss and the boss's wife got into such a mess. The boss's strong personality is just one aspect, and most importantly, it's just that terrible thing to say. If a man has money, he will go bad. Home flowers are not as fragrant as wild flowers. Because the boss is becoming more and more reckless, the boss lady almost never comes to the company now. So little does anyone know that she is actually the largest shareholder of our company. The boss's wife suddenly came to the company today, and it was late at night, which surprised me a bit. Although I started working at the beginning of the company's opening, over the years, I haven't had much communication with the boss lady. The name Jiang Xiaohui was also given to me by other colleagues, which is nothing more than a joke about me having such a convenient job but not being close to women. Unexpectedly, Chulina also knew. I'm a bit at a loss. Chulina was smoking while asking me, "Why are you smoking alone here?" I gave a bitter smile and said, "I've been heartbroken." Chulina widened her eyes. "I don't know, I remember you and your girlfriend were already engaged and planning to get a certificate." I shook my head bitterly and didn't speak. What can I say about this kind of thing? How many times did Chen Lin roll the sheets behind my back with other men? Suddenly, the fragrant breeze blew in the air. I was lost in thought and saw Chulina approaching me, her gaze fixed on me. My eyes met each other, and I felt a little panic. "Hee, little brother, it's just a breakup. What a big deal. Come on, my sister will take you to see the world today, and then you won't be so sad." As she spoke, she couldn't help but grab my hand and walk downstairs. Feeling the cool touch in my palms, my whole body immediately tensed and my walking posture became somewhat unnatural. My first action was instinctively looking up at the camera on the rooftop. When I realized it again, I had already been dragged into the hallway by Chulina. "Chu, General Manager Chu, where are you taking me?" I was pulled by Chulina, trying to retract my hand, but she exerted force on her palm and made it clear that she wouldn't let me go. Unconsciously, we arrived at the door of the CEO's office on the top floor. Just as I was puzzled, I saw Chulina pull out a door card and open the office door. "Let's go in." Chulina leaned in my ear and whispered. I became even more anxious. As an employee of my company, I sneaked into the boss's office and got bumped into by him. I immediately had to roll up and get lost. I looked at Chulina pleadingly and said, "Mr. Chu, I just broke up in love, but I don't want to lose my job yet." Chulina chuckled and said, "Why are you so timid? Don't procrastinate, go in." In the darkness, I felt as if Chulina had pushed my back and I stumbled into the pitch-black office. Just when I wanted to turn around and leave without anyone noticing. Suddenly, a blood-tingling sound came from the living room inside. Obviously, someone is fighting fiercely inside. "Mr. Zhang, exert yourself, he's going to die. Little slut, you can't take it anymore after only a few minutes." I couldn't help but pause in my footsteps. The man inside is naturally my boss Zhang Dequan. As for that woman, I knew from the sound of her voice that she was a broadcaster under my command named Xian Xian. At this moment, I had no intention of eavesdropping on the boss's wall, but was extremely nervous. Security guards have been patrolling inside the corridor. If anyone finds out, I'm definitely dead. Just as I was about to run away, a warm breath suddenly blew in my ear. "How about it, is it stimulating?" Chulina's voice rang in my ear. She was so close to me that I could feel the breath emanating from her red lips, gently rubbing against my earlobes. In the midst of extreme nervousness, I actually felt a different kind of stimulation. I stuttered and said, "Chu, President Chu, don't do this." However, Chulina, like a madman, not only failed to restrain herself, but also intensified, sticking her whole body to my back. Her left arm wrapped around my chest, and most of her body weight was pressed against me. "Little brother, it seems like you can't do it. So, do you want to talk to me?" The next moment, my body couldn't help but tremble. Chulina opened her mouth and bit into my earlobe, while her other hand pressed directly between my legs. Listening to the sound coming from the living room in my ear, and behind me, there is a beautiful boss named Chulina throwing herself in the arms. Who can resist it? I didn't care about the natural reaction of my body's embarrassment, and almost cried urgently. Chu, Mr. Chu, if you show Mr. Zhang this way. Chu Lina snorted coldly, he's playing with women in front of me. What's wrong with me finding some fun? Jiang Hao, can't you? Speaking, Chulina suddenly grabbed her right hand. I am both angry and anxious. Damn it, this situation, let alone Lu Xiaohui, even a real eunuch can't bear it. Chapter 4. Playing with Fire. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. In the dark environment, the intense sound of battle in the living room is constantly heard. Behind her, there was another fairy named Chulina constantly teasing. At the moment, I felt a flame burning in my lower abdomen, and my body became incredibly hot. I suddenly turned my head and roughly grabbed Chulina's 2 arms, using the faint light that came in from outside the window to press her onto the nearby sofa. Mr. Chu, you're playing with fire. I panted heavily and pressed Chulina under my body. Chulina didn't panic at all. She reached out to touch my face and gently bit my ear. Yeah, do you like it? Chulina's hands were icy cold and very smooth. The jasmine perfume, with the movement of her hands, kept getting into my nostrils. My whole body was hot and dry, and the only thought in my heart was to devour the fairy in front of me. Suddenly, my whole body shook. Chulina, this fairy, actually stuffed her fingers into my mouth and rubbed my lips back and forth. I don't know why, just such a simple action almost made me lose control. If her lower abdomen was just aflame just now, her action would be like sprinkling a handful of combustion aid. That flame suddenly rose up. For the first time in my life, I have experienced what burning desire is. Just as I was about to take further action, Chulina suddenly raised a finger and shook it in front of me, then pointed to the door of the living room. Shoo! Suddenly, I was like pouring a bucket of cold water on my head. What am I doing? In the boss's office, just a wall away from him, with his wife, Xiao Sa, go get me a bottle of water and bring it in. In the living room, Zhang Dequan's voice came out. I immediately became nervous and tried my best to give Chulina a wink, gesturing for her to run away before anyone came out. However, Chulina blinked at me without any intention of leaving. Damn it, crazy woman. I cursed softly. Chulina wanted to die, but I didn't want to be buried with her. I was about to get up when I suddenly heard footsteps coming from the living room. At the moment, I was scared out of a cold sweat on my back. At this moment, Chulina finally moved. She lifted me off the sofa onto the carpet, then flipped over and pressed me directly onto her. Don't talk. I stared blankly at Chulina. At this moment, she sat astride my waist, her entire upper body tightly pressed against me. Feeling the warm touch in my lower body, I feel numb. The door was finally pushed open from inside, and under the light of the inner room, I glanced over there. A petite figure, completely naked, walked out of the inner room. As I guessed, this person is my humble subordinate. To be honest, when I first heard her voice, I was a bit uncomfortable. Qian Qian is the most normal anchor under my command. In my experience, the reason why other female anchors choose such an industry is because they have their own unbearable past. Either there are problems with the original family or emotional setbacks. But humility is different. She is a local, comes from a decent family, and is also a serious college student. She has a sweet appearance and a standard image of a well-behaved woman. She studies classical dance, sings well, and the live broadcast room is relatively healthy, with very few people driving around with jokes. Overall, it's not surprising for any anchor to get involved with Zhang Dequan. But I didn't expect that Zhang Dequan would bring trouble to her. However, at best, I am a bit surprised. After all, I have already seen such things as they are. Qianqian walked barefoot and gracefully to the refrigerator. At this moment, I am located on a sofa next to her. She just needs to lean a little further towards the sofa and look down to see me and Chulina. I was extremely nervous, my gaze fixed on the direction of the refrigerator. However, what I was afraid of ultimately did not happen. After all, who would a normal person have anticipated such a scenario? Quickly, Qian walked into the living room with 2 bottles of water and twisted his waist, then closed the door. I finally took a deep breath, and it wasn't until then that I realized that my forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat. Are you really so nervous? Chulina sat on top of me, looking down at me with a smile on her face. From my perspective, I can see a white and deep ravine. I quickly shifted my gaze to the side, only to see a scene that made me want to have a nosebleed. Chulina was already wearing a short dress, sitting astride me, with the skirt almost flipped up to her waist. Despite being in a dimly lit environment, the black lace edge still occupied all of my sight. Does it look good? Chulina leaned over my ear and blew hot air into my ear, asking. Damn it, this fairy. I bit my tongue hard, and the intense pain made me slightly clearer. Don't go crazy. At this moment, I don't know where the courage came from, and it pushed Chulina off me with just one push. She was half lying on the carpet, not at all annoyed, but turned her face and looked at me with a smile. The legs in stockings were constantly rubbing against my calves, while reaching out to hook my chin. Little brother, you're not being honest. Or do you mean, I'm not as good looking as that girl just now? As she spoke, Chulina said to me in a self-deprecating tone that seemed fake at first glance, hey, after all, I'm getting older, so it's normal for you to not like me. I choked my chest in one breath, opened my mouth, wanted to speak, but couldn't speak. In a fit of anger, I simply didn't bother to talk to her. The evil fire in the lower abdomen has not dissipated yet, and there is a tent on the pants. I don't even know why, at this moment, my mood is inexplicably relaxed. However, Chulina was unwilling to let me go. She glanced at my pants. What, are you trying to refute me and say that I look better than her? Oh, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. As she spoke, she leaned over again and grabbed my cheeks with both hands, forcing me to look at her. Do you want to? I really can do it. Such a beauty, biting her lips and saying such things. I think the vast majority of men in the world cannot control it. Just when my heart was aroused by her teasing, and I wanted to do nothing but take care of her here. In the living room, the sudden conversation between Zhang Dequan and Qian, like a bowl of cold water, completely extinguished my anger. Chapter 5. Ask you something. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Zhang, when will you divorce? A humble voice came from within. I suddenly looked at Chulina in surprise, feeling a bit absurd in my heart. Divorce. Is this humility being pinched by the donkey's buttocks? It's not even possible to ask such a question. You should know that in the marriage between Zhang Dequan and Chulina, there is no doubt that Chulina is the one who holds the initiative. There is no other reason, as their careers are tightly tied together. In the company, Chulina is the largest shareholder, and as long as she is willing, she can sweep Zhang Dequan out at any time. By then, Zhang Dequan will really have nothing left. However, then I came to understand a bit more. As for men, it's normal for them to be stuttering in bed. Besides, it is estimated that Zhang Dequan will not explain the company's situation clearly to Qian. This matter is probably the carrot that Zhang Dequan is hanging in front of Qian. There is always hope, but it can never be obtained. However, Zhang Dequan's answer was completely different from what I had imagined. What are you in a hurry? Hee, that woman holds 51% of the company's shares in her hand. If I want to leave her, I have to take these shares first. However, she is too shrewd, and I am not very good at getting started. There is no way, I can only use some off-the-table tactics. Off-the-plate move. I feel inexplicable. Zhang Dequan wouldn't be so naive, would he? He and Chulina have already been on par, and their conflict is simply irreconcilable. If it weren't for the stability of the company, the two of them might have gone their separate ways long ago. Chulina, such a smart person, naturally knows where her greatest confidence lies. What method can Zhang Dequan use to get Chu Lina to hand over her shares? Obviously, Qian is not a fool, and he also doesn't believe much in Zhang Dequan's words. Mr. Zhang, you'll be fooling me by saying, some are not. But I'm telling you, my uncle said that the policy for new city planning will be announced in at most half a month. If you don't handle these things, he won't be able to help you even if he wants to. Even through a door, I could tell that Zhang Dequan was immediately anxious. Auntie, this kind of thing is really urgent. I can only tell you, 10 days. As long as you give me another 10 days, I promise to solve this matter. I don't believe it, you two have been married for several years, and now that we're at this point, does she mean that you can just relax? Humph, I don't expect her to say what I want to hear anymore, but I can make her never say a word. The next moment, Zhang Dequan smiled and said, baby, don't you know? Both husband and wife, if one dies, the other is the first-in-line inheritor of the estate. Upon hearing Zhang Dequan's words, I immediately felt a chilling sensation. I suddenly turned my head and looked at Chu Lina next to me. Before Zhang Dequan said this sentence, I always felt that I was also a veteran who had entered the society and worked for a long time. But it wasn't until now that I suddenly realized that compared to Zhang Dequan, I was simply a child. However, to be honest, even if Zhang Dequan grinned and said that he was plotting money or killing his wife, I didn't think he was too scary. Because of Chu Lina in front of me, it makes me feel even more terrifying. At this moment, her face was still smiling, but that kind of smile inexplicably made me feel a bit cold. In the living room, Qian was obviously also startled by Zhang Dequan's words. Ah! Zhang, Mr. Zhang, don't scare me. Our business belongs to business, don't do this. The humble voice trembled a bit. That woman has no relatives or connections, she doesn't even know who her parents are. If it weren't for meeting me back then, how could she have lived like this? I'm just taking back what I gave her. Besides, who told you I'm going to break the law? Don't worry, I know how to do it. Zhang Dequan's words left me completely confused. At this moment, I suddenly heard Chu Lina chuckle lightly. Hee, let's go. Sister, please go and have a drink. Looking at Chu Lina, who still had a bright smile, I cautiously asked, Mr. Chu, are you okay? What can I do? Chu Lina said, her eyes rolled, and she gave me a charming glance. If I feel very uncomfortable now and want to find a man to retaliate against him, can you help me? I fell silent and didn't answer. Because I think Chu Lina must be feeling particularly uncomfortable now. Although I never consider myself a good person, I really can't do such things. After all, she is also a pitiful person. If she really wants to do that, I am really a petty person who takes advantage of others. Chu Lina gave me a white glance and said with a smile, little brother, you really can't do it, can you? Giving you a chance is not worth it. How about you really don't consider it? It's very exciting. I shook my head and said seriously, Mr. Chu, don't joke anymore. I think the most important thing you should do is to go to the police. Upon hearing my words, Chu Lina suddenly froze. Then, she lifted her finger and forcefully poked my forehead. Ha, little brat. If you really want to help me, why don't you go drink with me? 10 minutes later, Chu Lina and I arrived at the bar downstairs of the company. Chu Lina held her wine glass and sat next to me in the booth, exuding a strong aura. Such a woman, even in a high-end bar full of beautiful women, is enough to attract the attention of the whole audience. Come on, little brother, we won't go home until we're drunk today. Speaking, Chu Lina took the initiative to clink a glass with me. Where am I in the mood to drink now? I asked directly, why didn't you call the police? You're in danger now. Chu Lina gave me a strange look and suddenly spoke up. Are you caring about me? Chu Lina continued to look at me with that strange gaze, and then suddenly reached out and rubbed my face. You're so cute. Just when I was at a loss, I heard Chulina ask again, "Don't think about it, let's talk about you. Why are you heartbroken?" My face turned pale. If it were in the past, I would never have told anyone about this matter. However, perhaps because we have gone through so many things together with Chulina just now, we feel to some extent that we are also on the same wavelength. I don't know why, but I didn't have any reservations. I told Chulina in detail about what happened today. Chulina listened to me while drawing circles around the edge of her wine glass with her fingers, her face indifferent. "So what do you plan to do?" I gave a bitter smile and said, "What else can we do? If we divide, we'll divide. At least we've discovered it now, it's not too late." Chulina looked at me with a somewhat surprised expression for the first time. "Do you really not want revenge?" I spread out my hand and said, "I am just a powerless worker. Can I really carry a knife and stab them to death?" Suddenly, Chulina approached me and looked at me with enthusiasm. "Hey, let me ask you something. Do you want to be Jean de Quan?" Chapter 6 is not worth mentioning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My mind is a bit confused. Because I don't know what Chulina's sudden words really mean. What does it mean that I want to be Jean de Quan or not? Isn't this nonsense? To be honest, but anyone who knows Jean de Quan doesn't want to be Jean de Quan. At least in my eyes, Jean de Quan has almost reached the pinnacle of being a man to this extent. In terms of career, his family has a fortune of billions, and he is thriving in places like Shanghai. From the beginning of entrepreneurship, it has been smooth sailing, and it can even be said that it has been smooth sailing. In terms of family, the wife he married was both talented and beautiful, making her the dream lover of most men. The red flag at home does not fall, while the colorful flag floats outside. The double peak of life and career is not just about double happiness. Those who are richer than him are more likely to have less sexual pleasure than him. As for those who are not wealthy like him, women cannot be more than him. I am not a scumbag like Jean de Quan, but after all, I am a man. How many men can pass the test of wealth, power, and beauty? Feeling Chulina's hot gaze, I felt a bit nervous, but also had an inexplicable expectation. I stuttered and asked, President Chu, what do you mean by that?" Chulina gave me a white glance. "What I mean, don't you really understand?" She leaned towards me, almost pressing her entire upper body against my arm. The soft and astonishing sensation emanating from my arms made me unconsciously tighten my body. Chulina's red lips parted slightly and she stared at me with a smile on her face. "If you want, then we can get rid of Jean de Quan and you can become the boss of the company. How about that?" Suddenly, I was awakened, and all my fantasies were taken aback by Chulina's words. I looked at Chulina with some fear, while also secretly cursing in my heart. What is the problem with these two people? Even if they seem to be apart, they would love to let each other die. But wouldn't it be so extreme? Opening your mouth is like fighting to the death. Jean de Quan wants Chulina to die so that he can inherit the inheritance. And Chulina also did not shy away, she opened her mouth to kill Jean de Quan. These words from the couple made me couldn't help but ask a question. Is it true that the law is nothing to these wealthy people? Of course, even if Chulina's words were not meant to draw a big cake for me, I would never have killed Jean de Quan with her. Although I am in a big dying vat like the live broadcast union, I can say with a heart-to-heart that I am definitely a good person who abides by the law. I have never done anything that goes against morality, let alone illegal or criminal activities. I waved my hand repeatedly and refused Chulina. "Mr. Chu, don't be joking. I'm just a worker, and I can't get involved in your affairs." Chulina was stunned for a moment, and then her gaze towards me became cold. "Jiang Hao, do you know that in any era, being obedient to oneself is actually synonymous with poverty and suffering?" She spoke and turned her head to glance aside. "The cheapest cocktail in this bar costs over 300 yuan. With your small income, are you willing to come here frequently to consume? I frowned, not knowing what Chulina meant by these things. Chulina pointed to a young woman dressed in jewels in the distance and asked me, "Do you know that this woman comes here every night and orders a drink worth over 700 yuan? It's almost like this every day, rain or shine." I turned my head and glanced at the woman Chulina was pointing to. That woman gives me a very delicate feeling. Even as a broadcaster and operator, she has read countless women. I have to admit, that woman is indeed very wealthy. She has a graceful figure and an outstanding appearance. Of course, it still cannot be compared to Chulina next to me. Because I could tell at a glance that this girl has a very high level of technological content. I have some disdain for Dao. This woman is far behind you. Obviously, Chulina never thought that I would say that. She was momentarily stunned, then laughed wildly and leaned against me. "Little brother, you stinky men are so talkative. I'll ask you, would you mind if she recommended a pillow to you?" I touched my nose but didn't say anything. To be honest, when encountering such temptation, I feel that I really can't refuse it. Nowadays, various medical aesthetics are becoming popular. Women are like crazy, rushing to give money to places like this because men like it, isn't it? To put it simply, who would refuse something that is pleasing to the heart? Seeing my hesitation, Chulina suddenly let out a cold snort. "Jiang Hao, where can't I compare to this kind of woman? I'm so proactive, and you can control yourself. Would you rather choose this kind of person than me?" I looked bewildered and didn't even know where Chulina's little temper came from. What does it mean not choosing her? Although she threw herself at me just now, I really need to use my lower body to guide my upper body. I can guarantee that I will definitely die very unsightly. I waved my hand and looked at Chulina with a serious expression. "Mr. Chu, don't make me happy anymore. What are you trying to tell me about all this?" Chulina flicked her hair and gave me a charming white look. "Jiang Hao, that woman spends so much every day. Do you know what she does?" I was stunned for a moment and instinctively said, "Where did I know?" Chulina pursed her lips and said, "She doesn't have a job, but she never lacks money and is very willing to spend money on herself. Her outfit alone costs over 100,000 yuan. The investment in herself starts with 1,000,000 yuan. Speaking of which, Chulina suddenly blinked at me. She's not a wealthy second generation, she earns all her money herself. Because, I don't remember how many times I've seen her leave the bar with different men. If I were lost in thought, then I looked at the woman with a somewhat contemptuous gaze. Seeing my appearance, Chulina chuckled lightly. "What, you look down on her?" I shook my head awkwardly and said, "Mr. Chu, everyone has their own way of life. I don't have the qualifications to judge others." Chulina gave me a white glance. "You should stop talking nonsense and look down on yourself. It's normal for a woman like her not to be seen by serious people like you." When Chulina said this, her tone was very strange, as if there was a feeling of gritting her teeth. "However, Jiang Hao, you should know that this world is ultimately a reality. Don't you know a sentence, laugh at poverty, not at prostitutes. When people are poor, even their breath is wrong. The right or wrong in your eyes is not worth mentioning to others." Chapter 7. What do you do? You are listening at novelfull.audio. To be honest, I felt a bit unhappy when I heard Chulina say these words. Because I can feel that when she said, "poor," she meant me. Chulina looked straight at me, then grinned with a hint of mockery in her smile. "What's wrong? Are you angry?" She took a sip of wine and sat back on the sofa again. The right leg, wearing black stockings, lifted up, crossed its legs, turned its head, shook its glass, and looked at me with a disdainful gaze. "Jiang Hao, being poor is not scary, what's scary is that people are willing to be poor." I frowned and couldn't help but retort, "Mr. Chu, I don't agree with what you said. I think my own future." Chulina waved her hand, interrupted my words, and sneered at the same time. How is your future? Do you have any future left? Jiang Hao, don't tease me anymore. Do you want to say that you are very hardworking, often working overtime hard, and completing the tasks assigned by your boss with quality and quantity, so you think as long as you keep working hard, you can live the life you envy? I don't know why, but seeing Chulina's appearance made me feel a genuine anger from the bottom of my heart. Isn't it? My tone unconsciously cooled down. Chulina chuckled and said, Jiang Hao, you're such a big person now. How could you be so naive? Has anyone told you that trying hard is never the right way to make big money? For example, your performance turnover commission is 3%, but what Zhang Dequan earns is exactly 10 times that of you. When you stay up late and work overtime, he's holding on to a woman and drawing a big cake for you, which can trick you into continuing to work hard for him. I couldn't help but retort, he's my boss. Is there anything wrong with me doing this? Big mistake. Chulina gave me a disdainful glance. Do you know what is the biggest difference between you and Zhang Dequan? I remained silent and didn't really want to talk to Chulina. However, she refused to let go. If you exchange identities, I can guarantee that Chen Lin will never dare to act recklessly outside. If Chulina only belittles my efforts, I can still tolerate it. But when she mentioned this matter, I immediately felt like a cat with exploded fur. You fart. Chen Lin did that because she was essentially a cheap woman, she was not behaving properly, she was cheap. Chulina sneered and said, yes, she's not behaving properly. She's despicable, and she takes the initiative to climb onto another man's bed. Do you know what the two of them said when she was having sex under another man's lap? I don't know, right? Let me tell you. They'll say, you're not good at making money, not even as good as her mistress in bed. You're a complete waste. Pop. I don't know why, at this moment, I can't control my temper at all. I raised my hand and slapped Chulina. Then, I was stunned. The anger stirred up by Chulina disappeared without a trace. I lowered my head and looked at my palm with some disbelief, feeling flustered in my heart. However, Chulina didn't even touch her cheek. She still had a sneer on her face as she looked at me and said, fight, continue fighting. You can't even conceive of retaliating against Chen Lin, but you dare to take action against me. Jiang Hao, you still admit it, you are actually a coward who bullies the weak and fears the hard. Just like you can also be considered a man. You dare to take action against me because everything I've experienced with you just now makes you feel like I'm a good person and someone you can get close to. And even after talking to Chen Lin for so many years, you still have a fear of her. You've gone crazy to please her, but she disdains you. You just don't want to admit that for Chen Lin, you're just a licking dog. I held my head in pain and buried my face between my legs. Don't say it, please don't say it. My face was filled with tears, and the emotions that had been suppressed in my heart since I learned the news were completely released, collapsing to tears. But Chulina didn't let me go. Oh, stop talking. Jiang Hao, remember what I'm saying to you now. You won't be the second person to tell you again in your life. You think you're living a clear life, but in my opinion, you're just a fool. At this moment, I suddenly felt my collar tighten, and then unconsciously lifted my head. Chulina grabbed my collar with one hand and stared straight at me. Do you think I'm a good person? Actually, the bad things I've done are 100 times, 1,000 times worse than you can imagine. Your sense of closeness to me is just because of a small game I played with you when I was feeling down just now. Compared to me, Chen Lin is even as pure as a white lotus. To be honest, even now, when I look at you, it's no different from looking at wild dogs on the roadside. When I feel good, I just give it a pat. But wild dogs don't understand these things and instead develop a liking for me. Can you tell me, is your reaction any different from wild dogs? In an instant, my face turned incredibly pale. It's not because Chulina looks down on me, but because in that moment, I suddenly understood something. That's all, what Chulina said is right. However, there's nothing wrong with you either. There are so many people in the world, over 95% of whom are just like you. They can live aimlessly for a lifetime, why can't you? Just like cows and horses, burying oneself in hard work, enduring hardships and grievances. Survive until retirement age, then work as oxen and horses for children, and eventually die in obscurity. This is your future. A future that is no different from wild dogs or cows and horses. Every word spoken by Chulina is like a steel needle, piercing into my heart one by one. However, strangely enough, there was no depression in my heart. Instead, there was a raging fire burning. Yes, I am very angry. When my colleagues scold the boss behind their backs, I always avoid it. Because in my heart, I have always held a grateful heart towards my boss. I have always felt that without the company as a platform, as a young and inexperienced individual, it would be impossible for me to save up the down payment for a house. But when similar words come out of my boss's mouth now, I can't help but be angry. Originally, from beginning to end, I was always the only clown. You just said, if identity is exchanged. Then let me ask you, if it were Jean Dequan and me, how would he handle such a situation? Chapter 8. Revenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chulina looked at me with some pity and said, if Jean Dequan were you, he wouldn't have done such a foolish thing for a woman. I said with red eyes, don't worry about that, just tell me directly. If Jean Dequan were me, what would he do now? Of course it's retaliation. When she said these words, Chulina's tone became more serious. Little brother, today my sister taught you a lesson. As a man, it's right to be able to bend and stretch. But if you form enemies and are betrayed, you have to do everything to retaliate back. If Jean Dequan encounters such a situation, his only thought is revenge. Whether it's for a year or two, unless he achieves his goal. Otherwise, there is absolutely no time to think of a second thing. I sighed and said, revenge. It's not easy to talk about. They have money and power, so what am I? Chulina sneered, without money or power, that's your problem, not someone else's problem. As long as you can make yourself richer than others, won't this revenge be avenged? This is the biggest difference between you and Jean Dequan. If you tell him that just one bite of feces can satisfy his desire for revenge, then he will not hesitate to take 10 bites in a row and feel like he's taking advantage of you. And you definitely don't have the determination like him. I said with a cold face, who said I'm gone? Didn't you just ask me, do you want to be Jean Dequan? That's what you're talking about, being Jean Dequan. Chulina blinked, as if she had suddenly met me. Do you really decide to seek revenge against that slut and her mistress? Chulina asked me with a smile. I didn't pay attention to her, but I began to ponder in my heart how to retaliate against Chinlin. There is an old saying that as long as the spirit does not decline, there are always more solutions than difficulties. When I really think about how to make Chinlin pay the price, I suddenly realized that there was nothing I could do about that dog man and woman. For example, I can go to Chinlin's workplace to cause a scene, or tell her family about this and make her lose her reputation. Although I can't recover any losses, at least it can make me vent my anger. I didn't think of these things before, it's just because of a long-standing belief that doing such things is not right. But when I think about it now, Chulina is indeed right. I am too naive and weak. They all squatted on my head to defecate, and I'm still worried that their buttocks are exposed. Is it cheap or not? Chulina didn't get angry when she saw me not answering, but instead took out her phone and handed it to me. Here, take a look. I took the phone, glanced down, and then fell silent. On the phone, there is information about a person named Wu Jie. This information is very detailed, even the various contact information of the other party is clearly marked. I immediately saw the ID of this person's chat app, which was the man chatting with Chinlin. Chulina's lazy voice came from beside her. Think about it, Chen Lin definitely didn't tell you, right? This Wu Jie is her first love boyfriend, a wealthy second generation. After graduation, she worked in Wu Jie's company as Wu Jie's secretary. Even if I think about it with my butt, I can tell that before that, the two of them would definitely have started fooling around. Don't blame my sister for not reminding you, Wu Jie's company can also rank in the top 500 in Shanghai with a household value of billions. I gritted my teeth and asked, why are you telling me this? Chulina shrugged and smiled, I just want to say that if you want to seek revenge from them, it seems that there is really no other good way besides trying hard. This statement almost completely extinguished my desire for revenge. Zhang Dequan has a family fortune of billions, and in my eyes, he is an unattainable figure. I can't even imagine the level of having a family worth billions. This kind of person is completely different from me in two worlds. Even if I have the intention to retaliate, I'm afraid I won't be able to touch the starting point where they were born, even if I work hard for a lifetime. It's really too far away. What, didn't you just look like you were going to eat people? You were scared when you heard this news. Chulina blinked at me. Despite being a young woman in her 30s, she inexplicably had a playful teenage vibe. I sighed and said, I'm not afraid, I just know in my heart that I can't reach the level of someone else, I feel powerless. When I said this, I was ready to be ridiculed and mocked by Chulina again. However, Chulina looked at me with a very pleased expression. Sure, little brother, I'm not too foolish at all. After a pause, she suddenly smiled and said, if you want revenge, I can help you. I can't help but laugh a bit. You. How can you help me? Chulina sneered and said, hee, who says that without money and power, one cannot retaliate against those who have money and power. When Pifu gets angry, he even splashes blood with 5 steps. Besides, we are not the kind of brainless rascals. In my eyes, this matter of yours is actually nothing. At this point, Chulina's eyes were seductive as she looked up and down at me. But. You're not me, why should I help you? I couldn't help but ask, so what do you want? Chulina suddenly reached out her hand and pinched my chest. Tisk, just now I thought the feel was pretty good. I didn't expect you to be quite knowledgeable, little brother. How about you promise each other with your own life? As long as you become my person, your enemy will be mine, and I will avenge you. If at this point, I still can't see that Chulina is teasing me, then my society over the years has really been in vain. Mr. Chu, just say what you want and don't come up with such a scheme. It really doesn't mean much. Chulina looked at me in surprise and suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. I can't tell, little brother, you have such a temper. As she spoke, she squinted her eyes at me and continued, since you don't want to make a promise with your own body, let's find a different way. You help me take down Zhang Dequan, and I'll help you retaliate against that dog man and woman. How about we have a fair deal? I pouted and said, Mr. Chu, don't joke anymore. I dare not do anything illegal, let alone murder. Upon hearing my words, Chulina suddenly widened her eyes and looked at me with an extremely strange gaze. So, when you didn't answer me earlier, you thought that killing Zhang Dequan was killing him. As she spoke, Chulina suddenly laughed until she was out of breath. Little brother, you're really cute. What do you think of me as? Chulina don't think she's a good person, but she's also a law-abiding citizen. Chapter 9. Promotion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chulina raised her hand and nodded at my forehead, saying with a smile, Jiang Hao, I don't even know what to say about you. I also looked at Chulina speechlessly, not knowing what to say. Actually, no matter which normal person, after hearing Zhang Dequan's kind of tiger-wolf words, it is difficult not to have any thoughts. After all, Zhang Dequan has been insisting on letting Chulina die. At this moment, when Chulina said, kill Zhang Dequan, it is inevitable that it will make people imagine. To be honest, I never doubted whether Jean Dequan's words asking Chulina to die were deceiving. I still know Jean Dequan very well. He can be ruthless towards himself, let alone others. Initially, our company was suspended for a period of time due to tax issues. Jean Dequan took me everywhere to smooth out relationships. The most memorable thing for me was when Jean Dequan knelt down in front of others in a restaurant, in public, in order to be let go of him. A successful person with a good reputation in society, who can do such a thing, can be imagined how ruthless his heart is. No matter how malicious Jean Dequan's mind is when it comes to dealing with a woman who shares a different dream with him, I think it can be justified. As for Chulina, as she herself said, this woman is definitely not a fuel-efficient lamp. Just think about it, they started their own business together as a couple. People like Jean Dequan have always been overshadowed by Chulina and become the major shareholder of the company, which can already explain the problem. These two people are fighting, their ranks are really too high. How can ordinary people like me understand their thoughts? Chulina seems to have guessed my thoughts as well. She gave me a white glance and then said softly, "I said you were innocent just now. Why are you even more childish now? What are Jean Dequan and I? How dare we kill?" I couldn't help but wonder, so what he just said. Chulina sneered and said, "What is he thinking? I can probably guess. You're really too young. Who told you that if you want to die alone, you have to kill her with your own hands?" When Chulina said these words, her face was calm and gentle. But listening to it in my ears made me feel a chilling sensation. Before I could react, Chulina continued, "I didn't mean to kill Jean Dequan, but rather." Chulina deliberately paused and looked at me with a smile on her face, spitting out a sentence. "I want him to be worse off than dead." I suddenly realized that my intelligence was not enough in front of Chulina. However, I also have a solution. If you don't understand something, just ask directly. There's nothing embarrassing about that. "Mr. Chu, what do you want?" Chulina smiled and said, "What would happen if you were Jean Dequan and woke up one day to find yourself in a state of disrepute and being kicked out of the house?" I hesitated for a moment and said, "Maybe you'll feel uncomfortable." Chulina glanced at me and said disdainfully, "So I say your situation is not enough. I tell you, for a man, money and power are his destiny. If he has never owned them before, it doesn't feel like anything. Once he has owned them, but is taken away by life, then he will definitely feel worse than death." I nodded vaguely. Actually, I don't know if what Chulina said is right or not. After all, I am the kind of person she has never had before. I don't know what Jean Dequan would think when he encounters such a situation. But if I had encountered it, at least in my current opinion, it might just have been uncomfortable for a while. After all, leaving the Green Mountains without worrying about having firewood to burn. At this moment, I saw Chulina approach me again and ask in an extremely seductive tone, "Hey, how about taking out Jean Dequan and making you the CEO of the company? If you can perform well, it's not impossible to make you my husband." I was instantly inspired. To be honest, if I hadn't encountered so many things today and heard Chulina's words, maybe my mind would have really had some ideas when I was hot-headed. But now, hearing Chulina say that, I really dare not agree. What are the ranks of Chulina and Jean Dequan, and what am I, little Karami? People have self-awareness, and I am very aware that such things are not something I can get involved in. Because, I suddenly thought of a serious question. With my abilities, it seems that I can't help Chulina at all. So, what is she trying to lure me onto her boat by all means? Although I am not a smart person, I am not a fool either. If I still haven't noticed that Chulina came to see me tonight prepared, then I really consider it a waste of life. "Mr. Chu, why do you insist on asking me for help?" Chulina was stunned for a moment, then looked at me with a seemingly surprised gaze. "Not bad, little brother. I thought you wouldn't ask. Fortunately, you didn't disappoint me." I have become somewhat immune to Chulina's style of speaking, which is both empty and practical. I impatiently said, Mr. Chu, let me ask myself, I really can't help you with the matter between you and Mr. Zhang. Why do you insist on pulling me together? Chu Lina smiled and said, I see, you're just belittling yourself. Jiang Hao, let me ask you, there are a total of 5 operations managers in the company. Besides you, when did the other 4 people join the company? I immediately understood what Chulina meant. Our company's operations department has a total of 5 major groups, and I am just one of the supervisors. However, the other 4 people were only promoted after Chu Lina was forced by Zhang Dequan to stop working in the company. Our 5 immediate leaders are the CEO Zhang Dequan. Among the 5 supervisors, I am the most independent one. Because although I am a veteran of the company, my performance is not outstanding. After all, the other 4 people went to great lengths to make money. What Ning Xianxian encountered tonight, if it were them, not to mention persuasion, would definitely be instigated openly or secretly. But at least I have one bottom line in being a person, knowing what can be done and what cannot be done. When other female anchors encounter things like Ning Xianxian, I rely entirely on my own will, neither supporting nor opposing them. They are willing to go out, that's their business and has nothing to do with the company. They want to refuse, which is also their own will. My non-interference actually has a significant impact on performance. Chapter 10. Going Private. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After all, female anchors are unwilling to secretly follow the big guys on the list, and big guys are not fools. Who would keep throwing money into it? Even if a female anchor is willing to secretly hook up with her older brother, then that woman is not a fool. Big Brother's money will be thrown into the live broadcast room, and the platform and labor union will peel it off layer by layer in the middle. It would be great if they could have 1/3 of it in their hands. Isn't it okay to have the Big Brother transfer the money directly to them? Which one is the image title of someone who is willing to show up and become an anchor? Isn't it just to earn those $2? It is precisely because of my work style that over time, the performance of my anchors will naturally not be much better. So, my reputation in the company is not very good either. My subordinates feel that my approach is too straightforward to help them earn much money. But others, on the other hand, think that I am a hypocritical person. Of course, talking about these is going too far. In addition, those 4 operation supervisors are all legitimate descendants of Zhang Dequan. Even if Chulina wants to rebel, she doesn't have much chance. On the contrary, I joined the company from the beginning of entrepreneurship until now. For her, it can also be considered as knowing the root and bottom. And my position in the company is not low, although my authority is not very large, many things are very convenient to do. If I really become a traitor and have the intention to manipulate Zhang Dequan. To be honest, even without Chulina's advice, I could have touched 100 ways with my butt. However, I have no reason to do so. Perhaps she saw that I had figured out something, and Chulina smiled. Jiang Hao, as the owner of the company, I have a word of truth to say to you. In fact, whether in my eyes or in Zhang Dequan's eyes, any of the company's operational managers can be fired, but we will definitely not dismiss you. It's not because you're the founder of the company and don't want to make you feel cold. It's because there must be someone like you in a company. Otherwise, the company's culture will be distorted. When everyone loses their bottom line for money, the company is almost at its end. I touched my nose and said, Mr. Chu, are you joking? Chulina ignored me. After thinking for a moment, I asked again, Mr. Chu, it's not a problem if you ask me to help you, but what can I get? Chulina smiled and said, didn't I tell you to take out Zhang Dequan and become the boss of the company? If you can satisfy me, I can also be yours. I said seriously, Mr. Chu, I am asking you seriously. In my eyes, what Chulina said was nothing but farting. Just like when she asked me if I wanted to be Zhang Dequan, it was just a test for me. She has suffered such a big loss from Zhang Dequan, how can she tolerate the appearance of another Zhang Dequan? I asked this question just to tell Chulina. I am not a fool at her mercy. If you want to pull me onto the ship, you must give me enough benefits. At this moment, even I am not aware of it. After Chulina's operation today, my way of thinking has undergone a fundamental change. Just when I thought Chulina would continue to draw pancakes for me, or actually promise me some benefits, she suddenly spoke up and said, Jiang Hao, to be honest, you don't have much qualifications to negotiate terms with me right now. However, you do have some intelligence, and now you can be considered enlightened. I don't know why, but I watched as Chulina remained silent. Chulina smiled and said, your rank is too low now. It's better to practice and cultivate yourself first. I instinctively asked, how to cultivate? At the next moment, Chulina made an unexpected move for me. She took out a stack of cash from her bag and threw it on the table. It's simple. The quickest way to improve your rank is to integrate into the lives of those with higher ranks. Here's 30,000 yuan, take it. I said helplessly, Mr. Chu, no merit, no reward. Chulina smiled and said, do you think this money is for free? I will assign you tasks. What task? Chulina pointed to the woman she had just mentioned and said, if you want to succeed and make money, you actually need to learn to spend money first. I'll try your ability, 30,000 yuan. Can you get that woman? Immediately, I felt extremely speechless. Little brother, how to spend money is a big question. Some people spend money to earn more money, while others spend money just for pleasure. The money is here, it depends on whether you will spend it or not. I said helplessly, Mr. Chu, you're not messing with me, are you? If you're also capable of spending money, then my ability is really great. I don't understand what Chulina is really thinking. According to Chulina's introduction earlier, that woman has become synonymous with advanced public relations in my eyes. Is there a reason why money can't even handle such social expenses? However, Chulina pursed her lips and remained non-committal. She picked up her handbag and stood up. Don't brag, I'll leave first and wait for your message. As I watched Chulina twist her waist and leave, I still couldn't figure it out. So far, I haven't figured out what she really means. However, my thoughts are also very simple. Don't think about things that I don't understand for now. What kind of medicine is sold in Chulina's gourd? I followed her instructions, didn't I understand? In the past, even if I had money in my pocket, I wouldn't flirt with other women. But now, I feel a bit indifferent. I've been talking to Chenlin for several years, but that cheap woman hasn't even let me touch her. But behind the scenes, she was fooling around with other men. It's ridiculous that I still defend myself like a jade for such a rotten guy. Especially, after being teased by the top-notch Chulina for a while now, I can still maintain my composure, which has been a hard work for many years of cultivation. Chulina paid me to find a woman. Such a good thing, I dare not be a fool. Of course, after all, I have never done such a thing before. After Chulina left, I sat in the booth and drank a few more drinks in a row. But for some reason, the more I drink this wine, the more nervous I feel in my heart. That's right, when the situation came to an end, I was a bit hesitant for so many years. In the eyes of others, I have always been synonymous with a good man. Chenlin is my first love. Before dating Chenlin, I had no interaction with women. Afterwards, that's even less to mention. Being in a live streaming guild, yet being able to stand alone without even having a colleague with a good relationship. No wonder others call me Jiang Xiaohui. I always have the wrong name, but I don't have the wrong nickname.